In fact, in 2003, Arvind Borde, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin were able to prove that any universe, which is on average in a state of cosmic expansion, cannot be eternal in the past, but must have an absolute beginning. Vilenkin pulls no punches. He writes, "It is said that an argument is what convinces reasonable men, and a proof is what it takes to convince even an unreasonable man. With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning," end quote.
That was, as you know, William Lane Craig getting ready to argue the Kalam cosmological argument. But this is kind of like a preface to that. Craig is notorious for embellishing, making up things, relying on presuppositional garbage for most of his arguments and all. But he's very intellectually dishonest. He talks about cosmologists and their views, kind of trying to make it look like it blends in with his. Why is then majority cosmologists, I think probably around 80 and 90% of them, are atheists? They still are. And number two, when he quotes Alexander Vilenkin, what he fails to do is, in the same book, in the very next chapter, Vilenkin goes on to argue about pre-existing conditions prior to a Big Bang. But that's just what he does all the time. Misquotes people, takes things out of context, and appeals to authority. We'll continue with this. This was just a preview.
So, why does the universe exist? Where did it come from? There must have been a cause which brought the universe into being. And we can summarize our argument thus far as follows. Premise 1, whatever begins to exist has a cause. 2, the universe began to exist. 3, therefore, the universe has a cause. Now, as the cause of space and time, this being must be an uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial being of unfathomable power. Moreover, it must be personal as well. Why? Because this cause must be beyond space and time. Therefore, it cannot be physical or material. Now, there are only two kinds of things that fit that description. Either abstract objects like numbers, or else an intelligent mind. But abstract objects can't cause anything. It therefore follows that the cause of the universe is a transcendent personal mind. And thus we're brought not merely to a supernatural cause of the universe, but to its personal creator. Number 2, the fine-tuning of the universe for intelligent life points to a designer of the cosmos. In recent decades, scientists have been stunned by the discovery that our universe appears to be fine-tuned for the existence of intelligent life with a precision and delicacy that literally defy human comprehension.
Oh yes, the famous fine-tuning of the cosmos. I will get to the KCA, but I'm just going to address this. He says scientists are stunned. He embellishes and exaggerates. What percentage of scientists? Why is it that a vast percentage of cosmologists who study the universe are still atheists? I think it's like 80 to 90% of them. And regarding the so-called fine-tuning of the universe and the earth and us and so on, well, there's quite a few people that would take exception in that. Dr. Richard Carrier talks about how all life is built from a chemical code that copies itself and mutates naturally. And this mutation causes fallible and malfunctioning DNA, which mutates regularly in our lives, causing cancer, in reproduction, causing death, disability, and other little joys of diseases. Charles Templeton, who was known as he was called the Canadian version of Billy Graham, before seeing the light and coming over to our side, compared nature to some kind of bloodlust orgy where one species tries to kill off another species, or they kill each other among themselves, including humans, of course. And these species, they die off in nature to the tune of, what's the figure now? We've lost 99% of the known species. The late Christopher Hitchens really put it the best. He remarked in a debate that according to the Christian cult doctrine, the Bible, Old Testament, for 98,000 years, human species did everything it could to barely survive. It suffered horrible deaths, most of which people were dying in their teens and even earlier from simple preventable things. He went on to say that had our species not migrated from a particular continent, I think Africa or someplace, we were down to about 3,000 human beings. I don't know how he calculated this, but I'm pretty sure there was evidence to that. He wouldn't use it, anthropology or whatever. He said we were down to about 3,000 humans before we migrated. Had we not done that, I wouldn't be here today making this video. He says, and then, that's for 98,000 years, barely surviving. And then for 2,000 years, this magical genie comes down, this deity. It appears to a primitive tribe in the Sinai desert, and it tells them that he's created this wonderful universe just for them. It's fine-tuned. I remember going shopping. I saw a bumper sticker in a car. It said, "Babies are a gift from God." I was tempted to get a magic marker and write underneath it, "Does that include Siamese twins?" So much for the fine-tuning. Now turning to the Kalam cosmological argument, or as I'm going to call it, the KCA, very brief history behind it. The argument was originated by a Arab philosopher around the 9th century AD. His name was Kalam al-Kindi. He developed it, and about 400 years later, Thomas Aquinas, around the 9th century, refined it and incorporated it in his famous 5 arguments, 5 ways for proving a God. The KCA quite simply says, as Craig has said, and I'll say it another way, everything coming to existence requires a cause. The universe exists, therefore it was caused by something prior to it. This cannot go on back forever. So the agent which caused the universe was uncaused, a first cause, or some kind of personal agent, as Craig calls it. I have 4 objections to this. Now, none of these are meant to be the panacea, the end-all, be-all. But I think if you use these 4 objections, you're going to be on pretty sound footing. And by the way, the first one I used, I actually tested it. I put it out on a YouTube set of messages over on some debate between Dawkins and Craig. No one got past this first one. No one. They tried to bypass it and move on to the Bible and God. Followed up hurling ad hominems to me. I was living in some kind of delusion. Isn't it amazing how they twist our arguments and turn them against us? The God delusion that Dawkins talks about, they now say atheists are living in a delusion. Anyway, the first argument. Just because a one-time event occurring sometime in the past caused a one-time Big Bang, why would this necessitate its existence today? It wouldn't. A first cause in the past does not necessitate it still existing now. If it does exist now, why does it? They can't explain it. What purpose does it serve? And I'll give you a very primitive example. Let's say I want to cause an explosion, a Big Bang, a little Big Bang, okay? So I get a hand grenade, I pull a pin, I throw the hand grenade, kaboom, it explodes. Now the way they argue is that you come back 13 billion years later and I'm still here and I'm holding the pin of the hand grenade. There's no need for it now. Number 2, if we were going to concede that this agent still exists, then it's incumbent upon the theist to explain why and how it created the universe. What purpose does it serve now? Remember that old saying which they avoid like the plague? The saying extraordinary evidence requires extraordinary assertions or claims require extraordinary evidence. Well, sadly, they haven't even posited any rudimentary evidence, much less extraordinary, in the realm of apologetics. When pressed about this, they'll say absurd things like, their God is not bound by our universe, it's outside of the universe. I mean, they're arguing for the creation universe, but you can't put this God within, it's got to be outside of it. Or he works in mysterious ways. And then they try to shift the argument and burn proof back on us. Well, it's one of their favorite tricks, I might add. And we may even respond. and will respond with an honest answer. We'll say we don't know right now, but hopefully someday we may find the answers. What's the reaction? They ridicule and scorn us for being honest. But I ask you, which response is the most intellectually honest? Which one has firmer ground? Theirs or ours? The answer should be obvious. We just don't know. According to this third argument, according to the KCA, their God is uncaused, eternal, has always been here with no beginning. We can make the identical claim regarding our universe, or even the causes behind the universe. More importantly, our universe came into being from precedent causes which might go back forever. Theories such as quantum tunneling, the steady state, inflationary string, or big bounce theories are just a few of many that can rationally explain how our universe came into being without some kind of personal magical genie involved in it. Even prior successive Big Bangs going back into infinity have been posited by some of our scientists. What's the theist reaction? Once again, more ridicule combined with contempt. How could we say that? We were going to create anything to argue against their God. Well, I beg to differ, because there's a slight difference between our arguments and theirs. You see, we can see the universe. We can see it. In fact, with devices such as the Hubble telescope and other satellite imaging or whatever, we can actually peer into the outer reaches of our universe, or some have said the beginning of our universe. Smoot's book, The Ripples in Time, actually addresses that, the beginnings of the universe. And need I remind you of the hundreds of thousands of experiments performed in a lab which have discarded some theories but proven many others, including physical events of the universe? They have duplicated many of the same things the universe has performed and continues to do in our laboratories. Can the theist make the same claim? Of course not. Of course not. I saw something recently. They call what they have their faith evidential faith. You talk about contradictory, self-refuting comments. Okay. Now, before I turn to the last argument, argument number 4, which I call a philosophical killer, I want to say something that fits quite nicely into it. A while back, when Christopher Hitchens was still alive, they asked him his opinion. He was asked his opinion of Craig. He gave the utmost respect to him. He said, and I quote, that Craig's a tough cookie. He knows his stuff, unquote. Now, he wasn't saying he agrees with Craig's arguments, of course, but basically Craig knows how to put those arguments within a philosophical context. That's total humility, in my opinion, and Hitchens is often criticized by the other side as being arrogant or whatever. But that was humility. He gives him credit, right? Conversely, they asked Craig his opinion of what he calls the new atheist, Hitchens, Dawkins, and Harris, among others. And Craig dismissed them with contempt. He said they really don't know their stuff. They don't know much about philosophical arguments. He gave them some backhanded credit, saying that they knew they were pretty good at their own disciplines. But as far as philosophy goes, they're really sophomores at it. And this is quite hysterical because Craig commits one of the most fallacious philosophical arguments that can be made. You see, the KCA, the Kalam cosmological argument, is self-refuting. Most of you, the atheists anyway, probably already guessed this. A self-refuting argument is one that requires no rebuttal from you or me. You just toss out the argument and it shoots itself in the foot. I.e., the KCA says all things require a cause, but one thing does not. So which is it, or one? In other words, if the premise, all things, is correct, then the conclusion, the one thing, is false. Vice versa, if the conclusion, one thing, is correct, then the premise is false. It shoots itself in the foot. Now, just to show you, I'm not like Dr. Craig. I'm not going to blindly adhere to philosophical fallacies of self-refuting statements and things like that. I'll show you how practical and rational atheism really works. I'm going to give you what I call an atheist KCA, an atheist Kalam cosmological argument. And I just thought this up in the past week or so. Number one, and in my argument, my version of it. Number one, many perhaps most things require a cause, based on our empirical observations and scientific studies, particularly in the area of biology or the biological processes, cause and effect. Number two, however, there are some things that appear to not require a cause for their existence based on the same things, empirical observation and scientific studies, this time in the area of quantum mechanics, a branch of physics. Now, of course, this doesn't disprove or prove anything. There's actually two premises, and actually within the premises, you can draw a conclusion, okay? But it just shows how rational and reasonable atheism is compared to the other side. I believe it makes more sense. But regarding those four objections, I believe they're sufficient to defeat the KCA. I rest my case. And remember, may God be less.